Hello students, it's your history teacher and I'm here with another online lecture, and this is the very last one for the school year. I will start this lecture with normalization, so exactly where I stopped yesterday. So after the Prague Spring of 1968 was suppressed, Gustav Husák, yes, the same Gustav Husák who was imprisoned in the show trial in 1950s, he became new general secretary and also symbol of normalization. So this process of restoration of the regime. In 1975, Husak replaced Ludvík Svoboda and became the president. Okay, so firstly he was general secretary and then he became president. During normalization, those who were opposing the regime were replaced. People had problems to find appropriate occupation and their children to study at universities. So when you wanted to maintain your career, you had to be in the Communist Party and to behave according to the rules. Some people who had their own opinion and desire for freedom couldn't stand this period. One of them was Jan Palach, a 21 years old student of history who in the year 1969 committed self-immolation, so he burned himself alive in protest against the occupation of Czechoslovakia. Nobody knew about it in the morning when Jan Palach decided to commit suicide by this means, but he had been preparing this for a long time. His funeral became the demonstration against the regime. There were hundreds, if not thousands of people in the streets mourning for Jan Palach. During the 1970s, the dissent formed. Dissent or dissenter is someone who strongly disagrees with and criticizes the government in the country, where this kind of action is illegal and dangerous. So to be part of the dissent is always illegal and dangerous, and person who is part of such group disagrees with and criticizes the government. The main document that the newly formed dissent issued, Charter 77, was an open criticism of the violation of human rights in Czechoslovakia. The signatures of this document were, for example, Havel, Vaculík, Landowský, Chramostová, Taterka, Kusí. You do not need to remember them, at least Havel. And in this document they asked the government for keeping the promise that was given in Helsinki Agreement in 1975. You should remember that in Helsinki Agreement there were these 4 baskets, and one of them was about civil and human rights, that all of the countries that signed the agreement should keep the promise and so give all of the citizens these basic civil and human rights, like freedom of the press, assembly, and so on. And they hope that this reaction, the Charter 77, will make the government reconsider this. But this did not happen. Instead, the government forbade its spreading and arranged the anti-charter. So there was charter and anti-charter. Anti-charter was signed by writers, actors, musicians and other artists, like for example Gott, Kopecký, Hrušinský, Pilarová, Sovák, Vondráčková, Duchoň and many others. And via this loyalty of these famous people and celebrities, the government wanted people to remain passive and quiet, and this happened exactly. Of course, all of these artists did not do this voluntarily. They were afraid that they would lose their careers, because this is what the regime did. They forbade many people from continuing in their occupations. Okay, so they signed it only because they were afraid of the reaction of the government. So this anti-charter was successful. And after the fall of the regime, many of these signators of anti-charter were ashamed. A lot of these people also are nowadays saying that they did not sign this anti-charter actually. And we can't say if all of the signatures are real or if it was just a trick. Apart from this, the 1970s was a period of prosperity. The USSR sponsored Czechoslovak economy with cheap oil, and the symbols of that era was legendary. Škoda 100, blocks of flats built by state, for example. Because of this prosperity, many children were born in the 1970s. Slovakia became a developed country with roads, heavy industry, educational system, healthcare, and many other benefits of socialism. But the progress was still slower than the economic boom of the countries of Western Europe. The lack of freedom and slower development of economy led to the growing disappointment among the people. The system was corrupted and based on family and party relations. Čiže pre rýchlo zopakovanie. Éra normalizácie, kedy bol najprv štátnym tajomníkom UVKSČ a potom prezidentom Gustav Husák, bolo obdobím okupácie, formovaním disentu, demonštrácií, podpisovania charty aj anticharty. Bolo to obdobím prosperity, ale takisto korupcie, rodinkárstva a vzťahov založených na straníckej knižke. Ako som povedala, v 70. rokoch sa rodilo naozaj veľa detí a tú generáciu voláme tzv. Husákove deti, pretože na základe rozvinutejšej ekonomiky sa teda mohlo rodiť aj viac detí, to znamená, rodiny si mohli dovoliť túto mnohopočetnosť. A teda hlavnými symbolmi 70. rokov bola Škoda 100 auto a teda paneláky, ktoré sa začali vo veľkom stavať, čiže tie známe sídliská, ktoré máme dodnes a ktoré často niesli také socialistické mená, ako napríklad Úsvit, Rozkvet, Mier a podobne. Here I have the main representatives of the Charter 77, so you can see them, how they looked like. So among them there's the future president of Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel. And all of these people were, like intellectuals who appreciated the human rights. And this is what they wanted. They didn't appreciate some prosperity because it was still slower than in the Western Europe and without the right on their own opinion. On the other hand, these are the main representatives of the anti-charter. So this was the main event when they had to sign, and you can see that inscription behind them. So this is Karel Gott and Eva Pilarová. Za nové tvůrčí činy ve jménu socialismu a míru. So they wanted to use these famous people because they were like influencers nowadays, okay? So when they did something and they declared officially that they are satisfied in the regime because regime is supporting them, all of the people would remain quiet, okay, and not protest against the regime. You can see also Karel Duchoň in the bottom picture on the right. There's, for example, Miloš Kopecký in the picture on the top on the right, and also Jan Werich. Jan Werich was forced to sign this in the end of his life, and he was really ashamed for the rest of his life for this. And you can also see him that in the photo. He really looks broken about this. So if you just wanted to continue in your occupation and to entertain people, do your art, you had to sign this paper. So we can say that the Charter 77 were people who took that risk. And the anti-charter were people who were afraid of the regime, but we should not blame them for this because we also don't know, we can't say what we would do on their place, right? And now I will go to the Velvet Revolution, but just really quickly because we already had that lesson when there was anniversary and I made that special lesson for you. So the first echoes of the revolution of Czechoslovakia started by a candle manifestation in 1988 when the peaceful demonstration organized by František Mikloško and Jan Čarnogórsky that desired religious freedom was violently suppressed by water cannons and the organizers were arrested. So I showed you the video when these water cannons were pushing the people. Okay, so important thing to know that candle manifestation 1988 organized Mikloško Čarnogórsky, it was suppressed. It desired religious freedom. It's called candle manifestation because these people were holding candles in their hands and they were praying, and it was suppressed. Organizers were arrested. The next demonstrations happened during the week of Palach, when there was the anniversary of students' self-immolation, but again, these were suppressed and many people arrested. The representatives of the dissent illegally published their program Několik vět, so few sentences, that was spread via samizdat. So this means that this material was printed on the expenses of the dissent and prohibited radio stations Slobodná Europa and Hlas Ameriky. So samizdat was a printed medium and prohibited radio stations were the oral medium. As the students formed the majority of the demonstrating people, the anniversary of the student's death, Jan Opletal, was used to protest against the regime. I mentioned this student during that special lecture on the Velvet Revolution. He was a student shot by the Nazis in 1939 during the student demonstration, and as an honor, this date of the situation, November the 17th, was declared the Students' Day. So, when the students were honoring this anniversary, it turned into the demonstration against the regime. The Prague demonstration that happened on that day, November the 17th, 1989, so on the 50th anniversary, was scattered by the police and the official beginning of the Velvet Revolution. The name Velvet Revolution is what we call oxymoron, čiže dve protichodné slova. Revolutions were traditionally violent and usually overthrew, wiping away the old regime in order to build a new society. Dissent rejected the strategy of the communist government with their strategy of non-violence, because you could see that all these demonstrations were suppressed in a violent way. But the dissent didn't want to behave in the same way as the communists, so that's why this revolution was very peaceful. The main representatives were Milan Kňažko, Lubomír Feldek, Jan Langoš, Martin M. Šimečka, Jan Budaj, Fedor Gal, Martin Butora, Peter Zajac, Maria Filková. I want you to know at least two representatives of the Velvet Revolution, okay? And also these demonstrations transferred all over the country. The general strike led to the resignation of the communist government and President Husak, and so the new created government had a majority of non-communists, and the free elections were in 1990, in which the new president became Václav Havel. So these are the most important things about the Velvet Revolution, but I hope that you all know this, because as I mentioned, we had this lesson, so this is just the revision of it. Here I have the pictures. So you have two students over there, Jan Palach, who burned himself alive in 1969, and Jan Opletal shot by the Nazi Germans in 1939. Then there you have two pictures, the candle manifestation in Bratislava on March the 25th, 1988, and November 17th, 1989 in Bratislava. There's Milan Kňažko having a public speech, probably saying "Utvorte koridor." There were two democratic movements formed in Czechoslovakia, Verejnosť proti násiliu, VPN, in Slovakia, and Občianske fórum, OF, in Bohemia. So these were, we can say, two democratic movements or political parties that were formed and wanted to participate in the new government. And now I have the very last topic of this presentation and for this year, and it's the dissolution of Czechoslovakia and formation of the Slovak Republic. You know, in Czechoslovakia, the system of pluralism and market economy was created after the Velvet Revolution, and the economists prepared the small privatization. So this means like slowly reintroducing private property to the state. By 1991, there was a huge difference in economies of two parts of the country. So we can say that the Bohemian part was more developed than the Slovak part, and also Czech political parties had little or no presence in Slovakia and vice versa. So this means that there were different preferences for political parties in these two parts of the state. So in order to have a functioning state, the government demanded continued control from Prague. But Slovaks continued to ask for decentralization. So Slovaks still asked for their own autonomy, but on the other hand, the Czechs asked for centralization. So there were very different opinions between the Czechs and Slovaks. In 1992, Bohemia's Prime Minister Václav Klaus demanded either an even tighter federation called viable federation or two independent states, so nothing between. Slovak Prime Minister Vladimír Mečiar wanted a kind of confederation, so like not so tight federation. So this between federation and independent states. So what Václav Klaus didn't want to accept. The two sides opened frequent and intense negotiations, which in summer 1992 switched to achieving a peaceful division of the Czechoslovak Federative Republic. Okay, so after 1990 to 1992, it was called Czechoslovak Federative Republic. Okay, but during the summer 1992, these two politicians started to talk about the division of this republic into the two independent states. Okay, but in the beginning, they didn't want to reach this. Okay, it all started because Klaus wanted a tighter federation or two independent states, and Mečiar wanted confederation. But when they saw that there's no compromise for them, they started to achieve this division. Czechoslovak President Václav Havel resigned because he didn't want to oversee the dissolution, which he had opposed. So he was against the dissolution of the Czechoslovakia. And also, in a September 1992 opinion poll, only 37% of Slovaks and 36% of Czechs favored dissolution. So people didn't want Czechoslovakia to be divided into two independent states. The Federal Assembly passed Constitution Act that settled the division of property between the Czech lands and Slovakia, and they agreed to the dissolution of Czechoslovakia on December the 31st, 1992, and so made Czechoslovakia the only former Eastern Bloc country to have an entirely peaceful breakup. So the exact opposite of what happened in Yugoslavia. So the important thing you need to know is that this happened because there were huge differences between Bohemia and Slovakia. They had different opinions. Okay, one was more developed economy than the other one. Czechs and Slovaks had different voting preferences. Also, the Czechs were for centralization, Slovaks for decentralization. Klaus wanted tighter federation, also independent states. Mečiar wanted confederation, so still there was no compromise found. People didn't want the republic to be resolved, and Václav Havel resigned because of that. So the Czechoslovakia was dissolved on December the 31st, 1992, and on the 1st of January 1993, the Slovak Republic was created. After that, in Slovak Republic, Mečiar's era began. So this was between the years 1994 and 1998. So during that time, there was coalition of HZDS, SNS a ZRS. Nemusíte to vedieť, aspoň chcem, aby ste vedeli, že Mečiarova strana sa volala HZDS, teda strana, z ktorej on zišiel. So this coalition was full of controversy and became the era of isolation, autocracy, and the era of the wild privatization that was destructive. People who were close to the government made fortune, and connection between the politicians and criminals resulted in the many traumatic scandals. For example, Tisova Villa, murder of Robert Remiáš, kidnapping of the president Kovács' son, and like many others. So I hope you have some knowledge about these scandals. If not, I really want to ask you to search it up, because these are like really recent events and it influenced our today's society. So we can say without hesitation that this was the worst period during the independent Slovak Republic. Because, really the connection between the politicians and criminals resulted in the high rate of crime and these many scandals and like isolation from the Western world, and it really looked bad for us. But after that, in 1998 election, Mečiar was defeated by Mikuláš Dzurinda, who ruled between the years 1998 and 2006. And both cabinets of Zurinda were reforming, and during this period bankrupting banks were recapitalized and sold, economic reforms brought new factories, and Slovakia became the member of NATO and the European Union in 2004. So we became the member of these two organizations in 2004. Also, during this cabinets had some scandals, but it's uncomparable to Mecher's era. So here I have some pictures. I will start in the top left. So there are Mecher and Klaus who were announcing the results of the negotiations. Then under this picture I have the memorial of Robert Remias and the place where he was assassinated. He had a bomb in his car. If you want to gain some more information about this, there are documentaries and there was also this film, The Kidnapping, alebo teda Únos. Možno ste tento film aj videli. Ak nie, odporúčam, môže to byť pre vás aj zaujímavé, tak je to nový film, je to naozaj o našich posledných dejinách a teda je tam aj scéna vraždy Roberta Remiaša, je to o únose prezidentovho syna. Then there we have picture when there's Vladimir Mechen saying goodbye in the TV, and he sang that his kind of like famous song. Čiže tam bolo to známe. Neublížil som nikomu z vás a tak ďalej. And the last picture is Zurinda. He was kind of famous for the cycling as well, so he did this quite often as a part of campaign. And this was a campaign for the European Union. And this was the last huge event of our history where I will stop. So in 2004, when we became the members of the European Union, also after many important things happened, but these are still not the subject of history because we still do not have much evidence about the recent events, like for example Jan Kuciak's murder and so on, many others. So we have to wait certain time to have enough information to learn about this. So with this, I will tell you goodbye, and I hope everything is clear before the last big test. So the very last exam you need to pass. And we did really great work together, so we can just revise the next year. So I want to thank you for your cooperation and wish you the best of luck for the test. Bye!